What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars loses his cool on late-night television? Tonight, we're diving into the explosive confrontation between Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jimmy Kimmel that left audience members stunned and producers scrambling to cut to commercial. This is the story of how a seemingly routine promotional interview spiraled into a heated exchange that ended with The Rock being escorted off set. If you thought you knew everything about these entertainment icons, think again. Stay tuned, because you won't want to miss a single detail of this shocking showdown. And if you enjoy stories about celebrity drama gone wrong, hit that subscribe button and join our community. The night started like any other at Jimmy Kimmel Live. The studio audience was buzzing with anticipation. Dwayne Johnson was scheduled to appear promoting his newest action blockbuster, and fans were eager to see the charismatic star in person. Backstage, however, tensions were already brewing. "I don't care what the producers said, we're not doing that segment," Johnson could be heard saying to his publicist. His voice carried down the hallway, catching the attention of several crew members who exchanged concerned glances. "He's been like this all day," whispered one production assistant to another. "Something's definitely off." When Kimmel introduced Johnson, the audience erupted in applause as The Rock emerged with his signature smile, though those paying close attention might have noticed it didn't quite reach his eyes. He gave Kimmel a firm handshake and took his seat, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit jacket. "Welcome back to the show, Dwayne," Kimmel began warmly. "Always great to have you here." "Good to be back, Jimmy," Johnson replied, his voice carrying that familiar, confident tone that had made him a fan favorite. "Though I gotta say, some interesting things happening backstage tonight." Kimmel laughed, not yet realizing the conversation was already veering off script. "Oh yeah? Like what?" Johnson leaned forward, his massive frame making the guest chair look comically small. "Well, for starters, someone thought it would be funny to change up the promotional clips we agreed on for the film." The casual viewer might have missed the flash of confusion on Kimmel's face, quickly masked by his professional demeanor. "I'm not sure what you mean. We have the clips your team sent over." "That's not what I was told backstage," Johnson countered, his voice remaining calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. "And honestly, after all these years of coming on your show, I expected better communication." Kimmel, ever the professional, attempted to steer the conversation back to safer territory. "Well, we can certainly look into that after the show, but speaking of your film, the stunts in this one are absolutely incredible. You did some of them yourself, right? You know what's incredible, Jimmy? The fact that we're sitting here pretending everything's fine when clearly your team dropped the ball." Johnson's expression hardened. "This isn't the first time either." The audience's excited murmurs transformed into an uncomfortable hush. Kimmel's smile tightened as he glanced briefly toward his producers offstage. "Dwayne, I'm not sure—" "Let me finish," Johnson interrupted, raising a hand. "For years I've been coming on this show. Always professional, always prepared. But lately, the way your team has been handling guests behind the scenes? It's disrespectful, man." Kimmel, now visibly uncomfortable but trying to maintain control, attempted to inject some humor. "Sounds like someone missed their protein shake this morning." The joke fell flat. The Rock's expression darkened as he stared directly at Kimmel. "See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Deflection with cheap jokes instead of addressing the issue." Guillermo, Kimmel's security guard and beloved show personality, shifted nervously at the side of the stage. The camera briefly caught his worried expression before cutting back to the increasingly tense standoff between host and guest. "Look, Dwayne," Kimmel said, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "if there's been some misunderstanding with the production team, we can absolutely address that. But maybe this isn't the best venue for—" "When is the best venue, Jimmy?" Johnson interrupted again, his voice rising slightly. "Your producers have been ignoring my team's calls all week. The promotional materials you've been using misrepresent the film. And now we find out the segment we carefully planned has been Completely reworked without anyone bothering to inform us. The cameraman zoomed in on Kimmel's face, capturing the moment the host realized this interview was completely derailing. Behind the scenes, producers were frantically discussing whether to cut to commercial. "The thing is, Jimmy," Johnson continued, his massive arms crossed over his chest, "respect is a two-way street. And lately, it feels pretty one-way when it comes to this show." Kimmel, attempting to salvage the situation, leaned forward. "Dwayne, I value our relationship, both professional and personal. If there's been a breakdown in communication, that's on us, and I apologize. But I'm hearing about these issues for the first time right now." "That's even worse," Johnson replied, shaking his head. "Means your team isn't even keeping you in the loop. Makes me wonder what else happens on this show that you don't know about." The audience remained uncomfortably silent, witnessing what felt like a private argument accidentally broadcast on national television. A few viewers began recording on their phones, sensing they were watching a viral moment unfold in real time. "Why don't we take a quick break?" Kimmel suggested, his professional veneer beginning to crack under the pressure. "And we can sort this out during the commercial." "Typical," Johnson scoffed. "When things get real, cut to commercial." That's the problem with shows like this. Everything's surface level. Everything's a joke. Nobody wants to have an authentic conversation. Kimmel's smile disappeared completely. "That's not fair, Dwayne. We've had plenty of serious, meaningful conversations on this show over the years." "Have we, though?" Johnson challenged, leaning forward intensely. "Or have we just gone through the motions? Ask about the workout routine. Ask about the diet. Play some silly game. Plug the movie. Everybody laughs. End of segment." The tension in the studio was palpable. Camera operators exchanged uncertain glances, wondering whether to continue filming the increasingly hostile exchange. The floor. Director was frantically signaling to Kimmel, drawing a finger across his throat in the universal sign to wrap it up. "We need to go to commercial," Kimmel said firmly, no longer attempting to mask his irritation. The audience watched in stunned silence as the host's famous affable demeanor gave way to something rarely seen on camera. "Of course we do," Johnson replied with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Heaven forbid we have an unscripted moment of honesty on late-night television." Kimmel leaned forward, lowering his voice, though his microphone still picked up every word. "Dwayne, I don't know what's going on with you tonight, but this isn't the place. We've got an audience here. We've got other segments planned." "The audience deserves authenticity," Johnson countered, gesturing toward the crowd. "These people didn't tune in to watch us fake our way through another promotional interview. They want something real." Several audience members nodded in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of how to react to the unfolding drama. The producers, meanwhile, were having an intense discussion off-camera, debating whether to forcibly cut to commercial regardless of what was happening on stage. "Look," Kimmel said, struggling to maintain his composure, "if you have legitimate concerns about how your team has been treated, I want to hear them. But blindsiding me on air isn't the way to handle this." Johnson's expression hardened. "Sometimes, public accountability is the only way to get results in this industry. You of all people should understand that, Jimmy." The implied reference to Kimmel's own history of calling out public figures on his platform wasn't lost on anyone in the studio. A palpable tension settled over the room as Kimmel took a moment to collect himself. "You know what, Dwayne? You're right about one thing. Let's get real." Kimmel set his note cards aside and leaned back in his chair. "You come on this show to promote your projects. We provide that platform. That's the transaction. If you're unhappy with how we've handled something, there are appropriate channels to address that." "Appropriate channels," Johnson repeated with a hollow laugh. "You mean the same channels my team has been trying to use for the past week with no response? Those channels?" A camera caught one of the producers nervously whispering to another, their concerned expressions adding to the drama of the moment. Guillermo had now moved closer to the stage, clearly uncertain about whether he might be needed to intervene. "I've always respected you, Jimmy," Johnson continued, his tone shifting to something more personal. "That's why this disappointment cuts deeper. When I heard about how some of your staff treated my crew during setup today, I couldn't believe it. That's not the Jimmy Kimmel operation I've known all these years." Kimmel's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about? What happened during setup?" "Your senior producer, the one with the glasses and that smug attitude," Johnson said, deliberately not naming names, though everyone behind the scenes knew exactly who he meant. "He told my security team they were, quote, overreacting about the crowd management protocols we requested, then proceeded to ignore the specific technical requirements for the demonstration segment we had planned." For the first time, a flicker of genuine concern crossed Kimmel's face. "That's not acceptable if it happened that way?" "If?" Johnson's voice rose slightly. "Are you questioning my integrity now, Jimmy?" The audience gasped. Even in the midst of this tense exchange, no one had expected The Rock to directly challenge Kimmel's trust in him. Kimmel raised his hands in a placating gesture. "That's not what I meant, and you know it. I wasn't there. I'm trying to understand. What happened?" "Well, while you're trying to understand," Johnson continued, his frustration evident, "let me tell you what else went down. The green room that was supposed to be reserved for my team was given to another guest. The clips that were supposed to be previewed with me before the show never materialized. And the questions you were planning to ask? Completely different from what we agreed on." Kimmel's expression shifted from concern to confusion. "Dwayne, I review the questions myself. We haven't deviated from what was approved." "Then someone's lying to you," Johnson said flatly, "because what I approved and what I was shown backstage 20 minutes ago are completely different documents." A murmur rippled through the audience. The confrontation had moved beyond awkward television into something that felt deeply personal and uncomfortable to witness. Kimmel motioned to someone off camera, and a production assistant quickly hurried over with a folder. Kimmel opened it, glanced at the contents, then looked back at Johnson with newfound perplexity. "These are the same questions we sent your team last week," Kimmel said, turning the folder so Johnson could see. "I have the email confirmation from your publicist right here." Johnson leaned forward to examine the documents, his expression momentarily faltering. "That's not what I was shown backstage." "Then maybe," Kimmel suggested carefully, "someone on your end is the source of the confusion." The implication hung in the air for a moment before Johnson's expression darkened again. "Are you suggesting my team is deliberately sabotaging this appearance? That makes no sense, Jimmy." "I'm not suggesting anything," Kimmel replied, his voice steady but tense. "I'm stating a fact. These are the questions we agreed on. This is the confirmation from your team. If you were shown something different backstage, that's concerning, but it didn't originate from my production team." The audience watched the exchange like a high-stakes tennis match, heads swiveling between the two men as the conflict evolved in unexpected ways. What had started as Johnson calling out the show was now raising questions about what exactly had happened behind the scenes. "Let me see that email," Johnson demanded, extending his hand. Kimmel handed over the folder, and Johnson scrutinized the documents, his expression morphing from anger to confusion and then to something more complex. The camera zoomed in as he flipped through the pages, his jaw clenching visibly. "This signature," Johnson said finally, pointing to something on the page. "This isn't my publicist's signature. Someone forged this." Kimmel blinked in surprise. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," Johnson replied, his voice lower now, intense rather than angry. "Someone wanted this interview to go off the rails. The question is who and why." The audience collectively leaned forward, the uncomfortable tension giving way to genuine intrigue. What had seemed like a celebrity meltdown was transforming into something else entirely before their eyes. "Look at the email address," Johnson continued, pointing again at the document. "It's off by one letter from my publicist's actual address. This is a sophisticated attempt to create exactly what's happening right now. Public conflict between us. Kimmel took back the folder and examined it more closely, his expression grave. You're right. This isn't your publicist's exact email. It's been altered slightly. He looked up at Johnson, a new understanding passing between them. Someone set us both up. The audience buzzed with excited whispers. The floor director, who had been frantically signaling for a commercial break, now seemed uncertain about interrupting what had become an unexpected mystery unfolding live on air. The question is, Johnson said, leaning forward intently, who benefits from making me look like an unreasonable diva, and you look like an unprofessional host? Who's trying to damage both our reputations simultaneously? Kimmel nodded slowly, his mind visibly racing. Good question. And why target this specific appearance? Why not any of the dozen other shows you've been on this press tour? Johnson's eyes narrowed. Because your show has the biggest audience reach. Because the controversy would get the most attention here. For a moment, the two men looked at each other with newfound solidarity, the adversarial energy dissipating as they realized they might both be victims of the same manipulation. Kimmel turned toward one of the cameras. I think now we actually do need that commercial break. When we come back, we're going to get to the bottom of this. He looked back at Johnson. If that's all right with you? Absolutely, Johnson replied, his demeanor completely transformed. Let's figure this out. As the show cut to commercial, the audience erupted in conversation, everyone trying to process the unexpected turn of events. Backstage, however, the real drama was just beginning. During the commercial break, the studio buzzed with frantic activity. Johnson and Kimmel huddled with producers, examining the suspicious documents and comparing them with legitimate communications. Security personnel swept the backstage area while production assistants checked access logs to determine who might have planted the forged materials. This is definitely a professional job, Kimmel said, pointing at the subtle differences in the email headers. Someone went to considerable trouble to make this happen. Johnson nodded grimly. The question is, who would benefit from turning us against each other on national television? As they continued their investigation, a nervous production assistant approached with a tablet. Mr. Kimmel, you need to see this. Someone's already leaking clips from tonight's show online, but they've been edited. Kimmel and Johnson crowded around the screen, watching in disbelief as a heavily edited version of their confrontation spread across social media. The cuts removed all context, making it appear as though Johnson had launched into an unprovoked tirade, and Kimmel had responded with dismissive condescension. They had this ready to go, Johnson realized, his expression darkening. This wasn't opportunistic. It was planned. The floor director approached urgently. We're back on in 30 seconds. Kimmel and Johnson exchanged a look. We need to address this head-on, Kimmel said. Full transparency about what's happening. Agreed, Johnson replied. But whoever did this is probably watching. We might be able to smoke them out. As the countdown to return from commercial reached 5 seconds, Johnson made a surprising request. Follow my lead, he whispered to Kimmel. Trust me on this. When the cameras began rolling again, viewers were shocked to see Johnson standing. Rather than sitting, his body language once again confrontational. The brief moment of solidarity they'd witnessed before the break seemed to have evaporated. I've seen enough, Jimmy, Johnson announced loudly. I'm not buying the forged document story. Your team is trying to cover their tracks. Kimmel, momentarily confused, recovered quickly as he realized Johnson's strategy. That's ridiculous, Dwayne. The evidence is right there. Someone set us both up. Convenient excuse, Johnson shot back, his acting skills on full display as he portrayed renewed outrage. Your show, your responsibility. I'm done with this. The audience watched in stunned silence as Johnson appeared to storm toward the exit. Kimmel stood up. Dwayne, you're being unreasonable. We should work together to figure out who's behind this. Johnson stopped and turned back dramatically. You know what's unreasonable? Expecting me to believe this elaborate conspiracy theory when the simplest explanation is right in front of us. Your team messed up, and now you're scrambling. Security personnel appeared at the edges of the stage, unsure whether this was part of the show or a genuine situation requiring intervention. Guillermo looked equally confused, glancing between Johnson and Kimmel for any signal about what to do. Johnson stepped closer to Kimmel, lowering his voice though his microphone still picked up every word. "Check your executive producer's phone. Right now." Kimmel blinked in surprise, momentarily breaking character. "What?" "Trust me," Johnson said, barely moving his lips. Then louder, for the benefit of the audience and whoever might be watching. "I said check your messages. I'm sending you proof right now." The audience watched as Kimmel pulled out his phone, making a show of checking his messages. His expression shifted from confusion to shock, as he apparently found something significant. "Cut the cameras," Kimmel suddenly ordered, looking directly at the production booth. When nothing happened immediately, he repeated more forcefully, "Cut the cameras, now." The broadcast continued as technicians hesitated, caught off guard by the unusual command. Taking matters into his own hands, Johnson stepped directly in front of the nearest camera. "Someone in this studio has been feeding information to a rival network," Johnson announced. "They engineered this entire confrontation for ratings, and I know exactly who it is." Johnson turned and pointed dramatically toward the production booth. "Your executive producer has been taking payments from competitors to create viral moments that damage your show's credibility, Jimmy. Check his offshore account. I had my security team trace the source of the leaks during the commercial break." Chaos erupted in the studio. The executive producer in question bolted from his position, only to be stopped by Johnson's security team, who had quietly positioned themselves near the exits. Audience members gasped and pointed as the man was restrained. "How did you know?" Kimmel asked, genuinely astonished. "The forged documents were too perfect," Johnson explained. "Only someone with intimate knowledge of both our team's communication styles could have created them. And only someone with access to the show's distribution system could have prepared those edited clips so quickly." Security personnel escorted the producer from the studio as Johnson turned to address the audience directly. "I apologize for the theatrics, but we needed to draw him out. Jimmy and I discovered the setup during the commercial break, but we knew the only way to catch the responsible party was to make them think their plan was still working." Kimmel shook his head in disbelief. "For those just tuning in, what you're witnessing isn't a celebrity meltdown. It's the unmasking of a deliberate attempt to sabotage this show." As security cleared the studio, Kimmel's producer rushed on stage. "Jimmy, we need to end the broadcast. Now." Johnson and Kimmel exchanged a look of understanding. The damage control would need to happen off-camera. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kimmel addressed the audience, "due to the unusual circumstances tonight, we're going to end our show early. Dwayne and I thank you for your patience during what has been, without doubt, the strangest episode in this show's history." Johnson nodded in agreement. "Sometimes reality is more dramatic than anything we could script." As the broadcast abruptly concluded, viewers across the country were left wondering what they had just witnessed. Social media exploded with speculation, theory, and debate. Had they seen a genuine confrontation, a brilliant piece of performance art, or something in between? The answer would remain a matter of intense speculation for weeks to come, with neither Johnson nor Kimmel providing full clarification in subsequent interviews. The mystery only fueled further interest in both men's careers, leading many to wonder if the entire incident had been the most elaborate promotional stunt in television history. So what do you think happened behind the scenes that night? Was the executive producer really leaking information to rival networks, or was there an even deeper layer to this extraordinary television moment? Subscribe now and leave your theories in the comments below. Did Dwayne and Jimmy orchestrate the whole thing together, or were they genuinely caught in someone else's web of deception? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.